If your lawn is mostly weeds right now and you're thinking, fine, I'll just throw down seed this weekend and start over. Stop for a second. Seriously. Stop before you open the bag. Because there's a very real chance you could spend the money, do the work, water like crazy for 2 weeks, and end up staring at the exact same yard you have now, except poorer, more annoyed, and convinced grass seed is a scam. And if that happens, it probably will not be because you bought the wrong bag. It probably will not be because you forgot to water once. It probably will not be because your soil is somehow impossible. It will usually be because of 2 things almost nobody explains clearly before people reseed. One takes about 60 seconds to check. The other costs about $2 to fix. And if you skip either one, you can quietly sabotage the entire job before the first new blade ever has a chance. Let's start with the one that kills the whole project before it begins, because if this applies to your lawn, almost nothing else I say matters until you deal with it. Pre-emergent weed control. That's the trap. If you put down a crabgrass preventer earlier in the season, or a weed and feed product that included a pre-emergent ingredient, you may have already built an invisible barrier in the soil that does exactly what you paid it to do. It stops seeds from establishing. That sounds great when the seed is a weed. It is a disaster when the seed is your new lawn, because that product does not know the difference between crabgrass seed and fescue seed. It is not selective at that set stage. It attacks the first tiny growth that comes out of the seed as it tries to establish. The first root, the first shoot, the first attempt at life. And it can do that below the surface, where you never see the failure happen. So what does the homeowner see? They see nothing, no germination, no progress, no return on the money, and they blame the seed. Here's how this plays out over and over. In spring, you do the responsible thing. You put down something to stop crabgrass. You feel ahead of the problem. A couple months later, the lawn still looks thin, so you decide to overseed. You spread the seed. You water it. You wait. Barely anything happens. So now you think the grass seed was low quality, or your yard is too far gone, or reseeding just doesn't work where you live. But the seed may have been perfectly fine. It may have germinated. It may have tried. It just hit a chemical wall you put there weeks earlier. That is one of the biggest reasons people give up too early on a lawn that was absolutely recoverable. So in this video, I want to walk you through how to reseed a lawn that is mostly weeds without wasting the season, without making the 4 most common mistakes, and without accidentally planting a fresh generation of weeds into the exact spots you're trying to fix. We're going to cover what usually causes reseeding to fail, which weed situations you need to handle before you seed, which ones you can often seed through, how to choose a seed that actually helps instead of just looking good on the label, why timing matters more than people realize, and the one cheap step almost everybody skips that can save you a huge amount of frustration. And before we go any further, I want you to think about your lawn for a second and be honest with yourself. Is it 20% weeds, half weeds, mostly weeds with a little grass mixed in? And if you've reseeded before and it didn't take, there's a good chance one of the reasons in this video is exactly why. Now here's the mental shift that changes everything. Most people look at a weedy lawn and think the weeds are the main problem. Usually they are not. They are the evidence. What you are really looking at is empty real estate. Weeds are squatters. They move in where the lawn opened up. A healthy, dense lawn does not give many weed seeds a chance. When grass is thick, sunlight struggles to hit the soil. The surface stays shaded, there's less open space, there's more root competition. A weed seed landing in that environment has a much harder time getting started. But when the grass gets thin, the ground becomes visible. Light reaches the soil. Moisture patterns change. Bare patches open. That is an invitation. So the deeper issue usually is not, how do I kill every weed? The deeper issue is, why did the lawn stop occupying the space? Because if you kill weeds and do not restore density, you haven't solved much. You've just created cleaner-looking vacancies. And bare dirt is one of the most weed-friendly surfaces you can possibly leave behind. That's why so many people spray a lawn, celebrate for 2 weeks, and then feel like all the weeds came back out of nowhere. They didn't come back out of nowhere. The space was still open. Nature filled it. So yes, reseeding is often the right move. But it only works when the order is right. And this is where most people lose the season. The first mistake is the pre-emergent issue we already started with, and it's the biggest one by far. If a bag says it prevents weeds before they sprout, or stops crabgrass before it starts, or is a weed and feed product with pre-emergent action, that lawn may not be ready for seed yet. Many of those products remain active long enough to affect your timing in a major way. For a lot of common products, you're often thinking in terms of roughly a 3-month window. That means your actual reseeding date is not set by your enthusiasm, not by the weekend forecast, and not by the fact that you finally feel motivated. It's set by what is already sitting in the soil. So the first thing I would tell any homeowner to do is this. Go check what went down in the last 8 to 12 weeks. Go look at the bags. Go look at the spreader notes. Go look at the bottle sitting in the corner of the garage. Because the lawn remembers what you applied, even if you don't. The second mistake is using a post-emergent herbicide and then seeding too soon afterward. This is a different problem, but it creates the same kind of disappointment. A post-emergent is what you spray on weeds that are already up and growing. This is where broadleaf weed killers usually enter the picture. These products can be extremely useful. Sometimes they are exactly the right first move, especially if the lawn is loaded with dandelions, clover, plantain, or other broadleaf weeds that are still actively growing. But they also create a waiting game. Depending on the product, the label may tell you to wait several weeks before seeding. Sometimes it's a shorter interval. Sometimes it stretches longer. The point is not the exact number for every bottle. The point is that the label matters, and assuming you can spray now and seed next weekend is where people get burned. This gets especially painful because the best overseeding window for many lawns is not infinitely wide. In a lot of places, late summer into early fall is the sweet spot. The soil is still warm enough for germination, but the worst heat is backing off and overall weed pressure starts easing. If you spray too late, then wait the required interval. Suddenly, you're outside the ideal window and the whole project gets pushed back. That's why timing is not a minor detail here. Timing is the job. The third mistake is the cheap one, the overlooked one, the one that sounds harmless until you realize how often it quietly ruins the result. And this is the $2 step almost nobody talks about. A lot of people spread seed and then top it with bagged topsoil. On paper, that sounds reasonable. They want better seed-to-soil contact. They want moisture retention. They want to keep the seed from drying out or washing away. All of that makes sense. The problem is that many topsoil products are not sterile. And when the material you spread over your new seed contains weed seeds of its own, you can literally introduce the next problem while trying to solve the last one. That's why a patch can look like it was improving. Then 6 weeks later, it explodes with new weeds you swear were not there before. Sometimes you did not lose control of the lawn. Sometimes you imported the problem in the dressing layer. The fix is simple. Use a sterile top dressing for the seed layer. A clean peat-based starter medium or coconut core gives you moisture retention and surface protection without the same risk of smuggling in a fresh wave of weed seeds. It is cheap, it is easy to spread, and for small or medium patch work, it can make a night and day difference. This is one of those tiny decisions that feels unimportant in the moment and turns out to be one of the highest leverage choices in the whole project. And I think that's why it gets skipped. People spend all their attention on the bag of seed, the fertilizer, the herbicide, the big visible purchases. They don't think the cheap covering material matters much. But the cheap covering material is literally touching every seed you are counting on. That's not a throwaway step, that's the cradle. And if you're new here, I'm Eli Yoder. And this is exactly the kind of lawn problem I like breaking down, because a lot of the frustration homeowners have is not coming from laziness. It's coming from bad sequencing, half-explained products, and advice that sounds simple until it fails in real life. Now the fourth mistake is skipping ground prep. This one is less dramatic than herbicide timing, but it destroys germination all the time. Grass seed needs contact with actual soil, not with loose thatch sitting on top of the soil, not with a matted dead layer, not with a rock-hard crust that sheds water and never lets seed settle in. Real contact matters. If you scatter seed onto a surface that is compacted, sealed up, or layered over with debris, a lot of that seed is basically just bird food with good branding. People think, well, I put seed down. Some of it should make it. Some of it will. But that is not the standard you want when you are trying to reclaim a lawn that is already losing the battle for space. You want high contact, high establishment, high occupancy. A dead simple way to check for compaction is to push a long screwdriver into the soil after normal moisture, not after a soaking rain and not when the ground is concrete dry from extreme heat. If it goes in with reasonable ease several inches, great. If it hits resistance almost immediately and you feel like you're trying to stab a parking lot, compaction is part of your problem. And if compaction is part of your problem, core aeration is not just a nice upgrade. It is often one of the smartest things you can do before overseeding. I'm talking about actual core aeration that removes plugs, not spike shoes that mostly just shove the density sideways. And here's the beauty of it. Those little holes become protected seed pockets. Seed drops into them, gets better contact, holds moisture better, and has some shelter from sun and surface disturbance. Aerating and seeding close together can be one of the highest return combinations in the whole process. Now, there is one major exception worth knowing, because it can solve a lot of the timing tension around weeds and seeding. There are products built around mesotrione that can be used in certain seeding situations and help suppress some weeds while allowing desirable grass seed to establish. That matters because it gives some homeowners a way to reduce weed pressure without choosing between total weed prevention and a fall seeding window. But this is where you need to be careful and not get lazy with assumptions. Grass type matters. Region matters. Product label matters. Some situations are much friendlier to this approach than others. Cool season lawns often have more flexibility here than certain warm season grasses. So the lesson is not great, problem solved, use anything. The lesson is there is an exception, but this is one place where reading the label and matching it to your lawn matters a lot. Now let's get into the weed situations that really change the plan, because not every weedy lawn should be handled the same way. There are some cases where you should absolutely deal with the weeds first instead of just throwing seed at the problem. One is when you have aggressive, creeping weeds that form dense mats or spread through the area in a way that physically interferes with new seedlings. In those situations, the issue is not just competition, it is smothering. New grass is trying to emerge into traffic. Another is when crabgrass or similar annual grassy weeds have created such a thick surface layer that seed can't realistically reach the soil. Yes, those annual weeds may die with cold weather, but the dead material can still sit there like a blanket over the ground. If the seed cannot get through to actual soil, the calendar alone does not save you. And the third is when the broadleaf infestation is so heavy that you're not really overseeding a lawn anymore. You're trying to plant through a takeover. At some point, it makes more sense to reduce that pressure first, wait the proper interval, and then seed into a cleaner surface. But outside of those heavier cases, a lot of homeowners do not need to nuke everything from orbit. That's an expensive impulse. Sometimes the smarter move is to improve density, fix the conditions that created the openings, and let a stronger stand of grass reclaim space over time. That over time part matters. Because another mistake people make is expecting a lawn that slid backward for 2 or 3 seasons to look perfect in 5 weeks. That expectation alone causes people to quit right before the plan begins working. Now let's talk about seed, because seed choice is another place where people get seduced by the wrong metric. The cheapest bag on the pallet is cheap for a reason. And the prettiest front label is not the same thing as a good blend. What matters first is whether the seed matches your climate and the type of lawn you actually have or want to maintain. Cool season grasses and warm season grasses do not live by the same calendar, do not thrive under the same stress patterns, and do not solve the same problem in the same way. If you fight your region, you are signing up for ongoing frustration. The second thing is the label itself. Don't just stare at the marketing. Read what is actually in the bag. Look at the percentage of weed seed. Look at inert matter. Look at filler. Look at the species breakdown. Some low-end blends lean heavily on fast-establishing grasses that make the yard look greener in a hurry, but do not give you the long-term result you think you're buying. There is a reason some lawns look fantastic for a month and then slide right back. Fast isn't always stable. And if you can match the seed to the lawn that's already there, do it. If your existing turf has a certain texture, color, and growth habit, a wildly different blend can leave you with a patchwork effect that always looks slightly off, even if everything technically grew. Also, check freshness. Seed is not immortal, it ages. Storage matters, heat matters, moisture matters. A bag that lived half its life in a hot shed is not the same as fresh seed stored well. People rarely think of grass seed as a time-sensitive product, but viability is not a forever promise. Now here's the free tip that might deliver more value over the next year than anything else in this video. Raise your mowing height. That's it. It costs nothing, and it changes more than people think. Short mowing exposes the surface. It lets more light reach the soil. It increases stress. It can shallow the root system over time. And the more stressed and open the lawn becomes, the more opportunities weeds get. A slightly taller lawn shades the soil better. It helps conserve moisture. It supports deeper rooting. It improves resilience during heat and dry periods. And when the lawn comes through stress better, fewer gaps open up. Fewer gaps means fewer invitations. A lot of homeowners mow too low because it looks tidy for a day and delays the next cut. But a lawn cut too low is often paying for that neatness in weakness. If you do nothing else after this video, raising the deck a notch or two is one of the easiest improvements you can make. And while we're talking about free adjustments, here's another one. Don't get overeager with herbicides on a lawn that is still barely waking up in spring. Even selective products can add stress when the turf is not fully active yet. If the lawn is already sluggish and vulnerable, that extra pressure can thin it more, and thinning is exactly the opening weeds love. Now let's talk about watering, because this is where people accidentally treat seed like mature turf and wipe out their own progress. Established grass wants a deep, less frequent pattern. That encourages roots to chase water downward. New seed is a completely different situation. New seed lives in the top layer. It depends on surface conditions. It doesn't have a root system to rescue it if the top dries out. Once germination begins, letting that tiny zone dry too hard can kill the seedling before it ever establishes. So the strategy during germination is not flood the lawn once and walk away. It's gentle, consistent surface moisture. Enough to keep the top layer from drying out, not so much that you create runoff or rot or a soggy mess. Then, once the new grass has come up, matured a little, and been mowed a couple times, you gradually transition toward a deeper, less frequent pattern. That transition matters because it teaches the new grass to root down instead of staying shallow and fragile. And while this is happening, stay off the area as much as you can. People underestimate how delicate those early seedlings are. Repeated foot traffic across a new stand can thin it faster than you think. Let's put this whole thing together in the most usable order possible. First, figure out what has already been applied to the lawn. If there was a pre-emergent involved, that may control your timeline more than anything else. Second, identify what kind of weed situation you actually have. Broadleaf takeover, grassy weed pressure, creeping spreaders, matted annuals, or just thin turf with scattered invaders. The right plan depends on the real enemy. Third, decide whether this is a lawn you can overseed soon or whether the weed pressure is heavy enough that you need a cleanup phase first. If you spray, respect the waiting period on the label before seeding. Fourth, prep the ground. Loosen compacted areas if needed. Remove dead matting. Improve contact. Give the seed a place to land that is actually capable of supporting life. Fifth, choose a seed that matches your region or goals, and ideally the lawn you already have. Read the label like it matters, because it does. Sixth, seed in the right seasonal window for your grass type and your climate, not just when you happen to feel tired of the weeds. Seventh, cover the seed with a clean, sterile top dressing instead of random bagged topsoil. This is the cheap step. This is the overlooked step. This is one of the easiest wins in the whole process. Eighth, keep the surface consistently moist through germination, then transition toward deeper watering as the new grass establishes. Ninth, mow higher. Keep mowing higher. Protect the density you're trying to build. And 10th, understand that some lawns recover in one season, but a badly thinned lawn often transforms over 2 strong reseeding cycles, not one. That last point may be the most important mindset shift of all, because when people think the yard should be completely fixed in a month and a half, they make emotional decisions. They overreact. They tear everything up. They spend more money than necessary. They assume the lawn is dead when it is often just outnumbered. Most lawns that look hopeless are not actually hopeless. They are underoccupied. They are stressed. They are thin. They are badly sequenced. But they are not beyond recovery. And if you get the order right, if you stop seeding into chemical barriers, if you stop planting into compaction, if you stop importing new weed seed with dirty cover material, and if you start thinking in terms of density instead of just weed death, you can change the direction of that lawn dramatically. Not with magic, not overnight, but with a process that finally makes sense. So if you are standing there right now, looking at a yard that feels embarrassing, expensive, one bad decision away from becoming a full renovation project, take a breath before you spread anything. Check what's in the soil. Clear the weeds that truly need clearing. Open the surface. Use clean cover. Water for germination, not for mature turf. Rye the mower. And give the lawn enough time to become thick again. Because once grass truly fills the space, everything gets easier. Weed pressure drops. Summer stress hurts less. The lawn stops feeling like a problem you are constantly reacting to. That is the real goal. Not just fewer weeds this month, a lawn that holds its ground. And if you want me to break down the next move after this, tell me what the dominant weed is in your yard right now. Is it crabgrass, clover, dandelion, sedge, creeping ground cover? or something you can't identify but you know it's winning? Drop that in the comments, because the right next step depends on the weed. And if enough people are fighting the same one, that's the next video I'll make.